Hello, class. We are going to talk about data visualization. Data visualization has been a very useful tool to help decision makers understand the insights that we can acquire from analyzing data. It can typically provide straightforward and intuitive managerial insights to its audience, which is especially useful when reporting your findings to the public and upper-level managers. In this video, we will provide some tools for data visualization. For categorical data, tables and graphs are frequently used to summarize some interesting findings. In tabulating data, summary table, also called frequency table, can be implemented. When using graphs, we can use bar charts, pie charts, and Pareto diagram. All these tools can be found in Excel and other popular data analytics software, such as SAS, SPSS, and Python. In a frequency table, we can count the number of observations of each category, and then summarize those numbers into relative frequency or percentages in a particular set of categories. For example, in this table, regarding banking preference, we have 5 categories: ATM, automated or live telephone, drive-through service at branch, in-person at branch, and internet. Based on the summarized percentage information, we know that 16% of customers use ATM. The most popular banking approach is in-person at branch at 41%. And the least used approach is telephone banking. In this sense, the frequency table can provide us a glimpse of consumer preference of banking approaches, so bankers can better manage the staffing for different tasks accordingly. For the same information, we can also use a bar chart to visualize the frequency data like in this graph. As compared to the frequency table, the advantage of the bar chart lies at its more visualization effect, providing a more vivid description of the frequency information. However, unless we provide additional frequency information, such as 41 on the bars of in-person branch, directly on the bar chart, audience might get a less accurate perception of the frequency information. To overcome the shortcoming, we may add the frequency information on the top of each bar on the bar chart. In the previous bar chart, we did not sort those different categories. However, sometimes decision makers would like to emphasize the importance of those more frequent categories and to gain a sense of the accumulated percentage of multiple most frequent categories. To do so, we may use a Pareto diagram. In the Pareto diagram, we place the most frequent categories on the leftmost and other categories in a descending order. For example, in this Pareto diagram, the most frequent categories are placed on the left. When there are many different categories, say 100 or even thousands of items like a big retailing store, Pareto diagram enables us to separate those vital few categories from those trivial many. In a company like Amazon, many of the items are in the so-called long tail trivial many. So a Pareto diagram can help highlight those more important items. In this Pareto diagram, we can also see an Ogilvy curve, which summarizes the accumulated percentage of the current categories plus all those categories on the left. For example, if we look at the internet categories, we can see an accumulated percentage about probably 65%, which is an accumulated value of the 41% and 24%. In our daily lives or the business world, we have a rule called Pareto principle or 80-20 rule, which suggests that companies earn roughly 80% of their profits from 20% of their products. In other settings, it could mean 80% of the consequences come from 20% of the causes. This is a very useful principle. So in practice, we can use most resources to focus on resolving those 20% of the causes or troublemakers or profit generators. Sometimes we can also use a pie chart to summarize the categorical data, like in this pie chart, especially if the frequencies information is in terms of relative frequency or percentage. Different from a bar chart, the pie chart can give us a better sense of percentage or weight of a certain category among all categories. Now, please let us switch to Excel to briefly demonstrate how to create the frequency table and charts. You may also pause here and open the same provided Excel file to follow me step by step to make sure that you fully master the skills. This course is more about learning, which is more important than the grade itself. So please do make sure that you know how to use these tools if you have not done so before. I understand that some of you are already experts of Excel. If so, congratulations, and you may skip this part. Otherwise, please let us work on this together. This same philosophy applies to the rest of this course. Now, let me demonstrate how to use Excel to generate a frequency table. In this data set, we can see that we have about 50 data point about consumer preference of different kinds of pizza brand. In order to generate the frequency table, you can follow the steps here. First, you are going to select the data, and then you want to insert data into the chart, the pivot chart and pivot table, and then you want to change the preference. Let me show you how to do that. Here you can see kinds of is an already generated frequency table and the graph. This graph actually is not required for the frequency table. It is called histogram. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But in the Excel, we cannot choose only frequency table. So we kind of generate the graph together. But that's fine. We don't have to pay attention to that for now. So let's try to select all the data we have. And we are going to insert the pivot chart here. And we have choice of pivot chart and pivot table. Again, we don't have a choice of frequency table. So that's the reason we use the pivot chart and pivot table. And we click yes. And we already selected data set. So you do not have to do it again here. You can choose to open a new sheet, but to be easier for us to see the data together. So we have to pick the existing worksheet. Here you can specify where to start because we already have a table up there. So we're starting from this cell. And you say, okay. Of course, you can move this chart here. You can see nothing actually at this point because we don't specify the information into the table and chart yet. So going back to on the right-hand side, as you can see, we have a pop-up column is pivot chart fields, right? You can see the preference. The preference actually is the pizza preference we just select from the data. So we select preference. When we select preference, you can see those pizza names pop out in the frequency table already, but you don't have the frequency information. So what we then do is we are going to select the preference and we kind of drag into the values. And the value is count of preference. And here, actually, this one, you click on that, you can see, you can choose to pick different kinds of value. For example, you can use average, count, but because in this frequency table, the purpose for us is to count the frequency. So we use count here. So let's stick to count by default. And now you can see the frequency already pop out. That's the same as the previous one I already generated over there. And as I said, this is the histogram chart. You don't have to do anything now. And definitely we can do it later. But if you really want, you can change the name to preference. And you can delete the total because it's not required and not necessary. So you have a very similar, pretty much the same chart like the previous one. Now, let's move this a little bit away. In the frequency table of the bank information, actually, we use a percent. Here, you can also use percent if you want. The percent actually is in relative frequency. So here, you can pick this cell. But when you pick this cell, you realize that it's look a little bit weird because it called the pivot table kind of information, and we don't need that. So here, what we need to do is we need to specify the cell name. It kind of, we cannot click on the cell directly. Usually it works, but here it does not. So we change it to D. We know it's in the column D and on row of 25. So we pick a D25 over the total number of the data points, and we have 15. So we pick this. And after that, we just need to drag down, and we have those percentage information we need for the relative frequency. And that is the frequency table we are talking about. Of course, we can, this is for categorical data. So whenever you have category data, you can follow the same step I just showed you. Just if you miss something, please go over and redo it. I mean, follow my steps again and try to generate the same frequency table here. Okay, now let me switch to bar chart. Because the bank information we show in the PP slides is easier, so I switch back to the data point we have in the PP slides, and that's banking preference data. And as you can see here, we have the ATM, telephone and internet, something, those different kind of categories. And we also have the percent information. So how to do the bar chart? As I show you here in the steps here, actually, you can follow the step by steps here. So again, you can pick the entire data here, and you are going to select insert the bar chart. So I'm going to insert. Here you have multiple different kinds of choice of the charts, and you can see that this is the bar chart. So you can pop out. Here you can see this is one choice. You can have different kinds of choice, right? There's not much difference except the second one is a little bit kind of thicker. So if you like the second one, you can just pick the second one, right? And I move here because I already generated one table out there. You can see that this is almost identical except the title. If you want to change it, you just change it here. Because of time, I don't change here, but you can easily change it to whatever you want. But this is information we need for the bar chart. So I hope this is clear. Again, please follow my procedure here, and you can generate the similar bar chart you want. Okay, now let me switch to pie chart. Pie chart is almost identical to bar chart in terms of the procedure. So all you need to do is you select the data set and you insert the pie chart. Pie chart, actually here you can see that you have choice, right? When you pick on this first one, actually, if you would like to different kinds of like 3D, you can do it as well. To make it a little bit different, here actually you can have a 3D pie chart like this, right? And yeah, if you like, you can change the the banking preference, right? So that's it, and that's the title change. Sometimes if you want, you can make a little bit slightly different by drag the graph or something like that, and that would be like that, right? Actually, you can also click on this to pick different kinds of choice of the pie chart. In this case, actually, sometimes you can show the numbers, and this actually is quite useful in many situations. So you probably, as I said, you have different kinds of choice, and if you like, you can pick different kinds of appearance here. But suppose we pick this one, and this is the new pie chart we have over here. So again, please follow the procedure and repeat the process if you are not familiar with. But overall, the bar chart and the pie chart are easier to generate. Okay, now let me go to the Pareto charts here, or this called Pareto diagram. We have the same data set. The procedure is almost the same, except we need to insert histogram, right, to get the Pareto diagram. So we pick the data here, and we insert, and we try this one look like the histogram, right? So let's pick this one, and we have the histogram here. We actually don't want the histogram exactly, except that the Excel put the histogram and the Pareto diagram together. So although you open the histogram, you need to pick the second one. That's the Pareto. They call it Pareto diagram or Pareto chart. And so we have to pick the second one here, right? And that is the table we have here. As we can see, it's look very similar to the previous one. We already generated over here. So that is the Pareto diagram we have. Again, you can pick this one, and you have different kinds of choice, for example. And this look more similar to what we have over there. And you need to change the chart title. In this case, you can say, okay, banking preference, right? You might also argue that that is easier or probably useful to put the OGIF name over there. And actually, this is what I just typed in previously, so you can copy paste, and that's your OGIF line. Again, OGIF line give you the accumulated percentage based on the current category and the previous one together. Okay, so this is the Excel demonstration of how to generate the frequency table, bar chart, pie chart, and Pareto diagram. Now, let me switch back to the PPT slides. So actually, this frequency distribution is very similar to the frequency table we talked about. Frequency distribution is a special kind of frequency table, which allow us to arrange and summarize data into a numerically ordered intervals called bins. So what is bin? This is the data set we have. We use this example to demonstrate how to generate a frequency distribution table. For a given data set, you may first sort the data in an ascending order like this one. We already sorted, right? So you can see 12, 13, 17. So they are in ascending order. Now we need to decide how many bins, or in other words, you need to decide the range of the intervals of the data to categorize the data set into different kinds of categories. So in this case, we use an interval of 10 and categorize them into 5 bins. So we have these 5 bins over here. For example, we have 10, but less than 20 as the first bin, and so on. After that, we count the frequency of each bin and summarize them into this table. based on the frequency, we can further obtain the relative frequency information or the percentage like in this frequency table. So we count all these numbers into frequency, and we can just do the relative frequency computation to get this one. And they are almost identical, just in different kinds of style for the percentage. So this is a frequency distribution table. Okay, now based on the frequency distribution table, we can use the outcome to draw a histogram. I mentioned the histogram already previously in the Excel demonstration. Based on the previously obtained frequency information here, you can generate this histogram. The histogram graph can give us more visualized perception of the frequency and distribution information. In this specific case, we know that the second bin is the most frequent categories. And the entire data set distributes like a bear shape in this graph. Of course, if we generate the frequency into relative frequency information, of course, a histogram about the relative frequency information provides some useful information on the probability distribution of those bins. We may thus tell the percentage information based on a given histogram like this. For example, based on this histogram, we know that the percentage of the temperature equal to 15, or the bin between 10 and 20 is about 15%, right? It's, as you can see here. Of course, based on different kinds of histogram, you can also tell the percentage information. For example, like this one, in this histogram, you can tell the percentage of the job applicants score between 10 and 20, and you know that that's 20%. For the percentage of job applicants score below 50, right, below 50, and you want to sum up all these percentages, and you can also use 1 minus the sum of these two, and we know that's 80% of them. Or the percentage of applicants score below 20 or at least 50, and kinds of at least 50, right, will be on this side and below 20. So kinds of combination of these two, and we know that's 50%. Okay, so please let us switch to Excel again to briefly demonstrate how to create the frequency distribution and histogram. Again, you may pause here and open the same profile Excel file to follow me step by step. Now let's go to this Excel file and go to the table, frequency table. Different from the previous qualitative or categorical data, now we have the quantitative data. And the way to generate the frequency table here is a little bit different from the frequency qualitative table. In order to get the frequency table, you need to define the upper bound of the bin here. So this is the same data we talked about in the PP slides. Because we decide to have the 10 as the interval range, so for the first bin 10 by less than 20, we know the upper bound is 99.9. Given that all our data are integer, you put 19.9 and 29.9 and 39.9, 49.9 and 59.9 as the upper bound of those bins. And you can generate the frequency table here. I already generated the frequency table, but to demonstrate it, actually, I'm going to kind of delete the data over there. And to save time, I don't regenerate this table, but you need to prepare the bins and the name of those bins over here at first, before we go to the frequency data. So this is the step I use to generate the frequency data. And the key will be the last steps, because we already prepared the table. So we are going to have equal to frequency. And we call the equation called frequency, right? And after we type in the frequency, we need to select all the data we have. And that's all the data point in our example. And we put a comma, and then you click on those upper bound. And we put parentheses. So those are the two input of the frequency equation. So again, this is the key. So I hope you will get this right. So after that, I'm going to type in return, and the entire table will be generated. The usual is kind of set it up by default, and you don't need it specifically. But it turns out that you cannot easily delete in this approach, so you just keep it anyway. And the last one is the sum of all those data I added up over here. As you can see that that is a relative frequency table you have to prepare by yourself, and that's the same, except that in different format. So let me kind of generate them for you as well. Again, this is the cell divided by, in this case, it will be by 20. So you have the 15 over there, right? And you just pull it down, and you get those relative frequency. This one, percentage is the same as frequency. So you just put that way, except that in this column, I already used the format of percentage. So you can have this, and you just, again, you put it down, and you have all those percent. Okay, so that is the frequency. We also call it frequency distribution, and based on the quantitative data over there. Okay, now that's so how to draw the histogram. We already did that previously in the Pareto diagram, but here we can follow the current data here. And based on what you want, you can pick, okay, this is the data you want, right? This is the data for the bin, so you can pick the data bin. To draw the histogram, you can pick either the frequency or you can pick the relative frequency. Of course, you can also pick percentage, but in this graph, I used the frequency to generate this histogram. You can also use the control. You use one hand to press the control key on your keyboard, and you select the relative frequency if you like to use relative frequency to generate your histogram. Okay, so to be a little bit different from the previous chart, I used the relative frequency. And now follow the step, we want to insert chart. So we want to insert chart, and now we have the histogram. We don't have to call the Pareto anymore, right? Pareto diagram just kind of starting resort the data, but we don't want that, so we pick the histogram. And you'll be surprised to see that actually the automatic generate chart does not work. The reason is in this chart, actually, it automatically, they pick the data point automatically, but it's not what we want. So in this case, you need to format the chart area. Okay. So again, use your mouse, and you right click on that, and you pick the format chart area. Okay, so you have a pop out on the right hand side again, and that's the chart options. And the problem about this one is on the horizontal axis, it picked the wrong horizontal axis. So you are going to pop out, you say, I'm going to pick the horizontal axis. Okay, I pause here a little bit so you see clearly on the pop out format chart area in the chart option, you pick the horizontal axis. And after that, you can see a chart here, right? And because there are so many options, so you don't have to do everything else. You just need to pick this one. And when you click on the chart, you have the axis option here. So you pick on that. As you can see that they automatically pick the bin. And in this case, they randomly pick the percentage based on the relative frequency. This is not what we want, right? We want the categories instead of relative frequency. So let's go to by category. After we clicked on that, you can see the chart actually is exactly look the same as the histogram on the left-hand side, except that you need to change the title to histogram, right? Histogram, and like that. Okay, so of course you can change the size, everything, and you can also to have different kinds of presentation if you want. So, or you can actually you can give a number of that onto the chart, so it looks like a little bit better, right? So this is the way we generate the histogram. Okay, so let me switch back to the PP slides. So far, we demonstrate the frequency table and histogram, and now let's go to the contingency table. I would say that we have drafts with a single variable data visualization so far. In practice, most of the time we have multiple variables. A contingency table is one tool to summarize outcomes of two categorical variables jointly. In the contingency table, we place one variable in the row and the other one in the columns. Okay, like this one. The value of each cell describes the number of items belonging to the respective categories jointly, and it'll be this one and this one, right? For this cell. In this table, for example, we have the genders as the variables for the row, and the type of the pets as the variables for the columns. In the first case, we have 42 males who have dog as their pet. In the second cell of the first row, we have 10 males having cats. Overall, we have 52 men raising either dogs or cats as their pet. On the other hand, we have 48 females having pets. In terms of the types of the pet, we have 51 people raising dogs and 49 people having cats. Because the number in each cell is contingent on the categories of both variables, we call this table a contingency table. For numerical data, similarly to the contingency table, we can use scatter plot to describe the relationship of two numerical variables. In the scatter plot, we use one variable as the horizontal axis, like this one. For the data of sales and advertising, we use advertising as the horizontal axis. Of course, you can also use sales as the horizontal, but kind of look more meaningful for us to look at how the advertising impact on the sales. So we kind of look at a little bit more intuitive to use advertising as the horizontal axis, and the other one as the vertical axis. And okay, so for the given data, we know that the sale is $23.5 million when the advertising budget is $0.5 million, and so on. The benefit of using a scatter plot lies in its capability in describing the relationship between any two given variables. In particular, it is a very popular tool to illustrate the correlation of two numerical variables. Therefore, scatter plot is very useful when we try to identify whether the two variables have some linear relationship or not, which is to be discussed again in module 5 when we talk about simple regression. As you can see in this plot, they do have a little bit kinds of pattern of linear relationship out there, although it's not perfect, but we do know that the sales and advertising are kind of correlated based on what we have in the data set. Okay, now let me switch back to Excel again, and we are going to demonstrate how to do that scatter plot. So here we have the data of the sales and advertising. I already generated two based on different kinds of horizontal axes. One is use sales, the other one is use advertising. And you can see this is the data about sales, this data about advertising budget. Okay, so the procedure to draw the scatter plot, this scatter plot. So the procedure to generate the scatter plot is follow this procedure. We select all the data, right? Select all the data and insert chart of scatter plot. And then we need to select the right values for each axis. So this is in case you have to switch the axis, but if we just select entire data set and insert the scatter plot by default, you can see that this scatter plot. So you have different kind of choice, but this one is by default. We want to pick this one. Okay, so we say, okay, and you can see that this is the by default one, and this exactly look the same as we have on the left already over there. Okay, so you might argue that to have the scatter plot like this one is not what I want, but just by the means of the correlation, actually this one look perfectly fine like this one, because both scatter plots show us that the two dimensions have some type of linear relationship out there, right? They are correlated, in other words. But you might argue that I want a different kinds of scatter plot to put the sales on the vertical axis. So if so, you might select the data again, and we are going to generate a different scatter plot. And so let's pick this one. And here we have this, right? As I said, it's by default and you don't want this. So how can we do that? You select this entire plot. And again, you can use your mouse and you can select data. Of course, you don't have to use this approach on the right click on the mouse to get select data. Actually, on the bar here, you can also see the select data, right? As long as you select this area and you select data. When we select data, we have a pop out like this. You want to edit the data point, right? So you edit, you have pop out like this. And as we say, we don't want advertising, instead we want sales, right? So we, on this cell, you click on sales instead and you return, right? And now we don't want the cell to be the horizontal, so we pick this one and we are going to equal to the advertising, right? So we pick the value of advertising. For this one, we wanted to have change to sales as the vertical, and we have that, right? So we say okay, and now you have the sales as the vertical value, and the horizontal will be the advertising. So this is the way we generate a scatter plot. Because it's two dimension, you can switch the horizontal axis with the vertical axis if you want. But basically, they deliver the same concepts about correlation between these two decision variables. So this we call the scatter plot. Okay, so let me come back to the PP slides. As we can see, so far we have talked a lot in this video. And in summary, we talk about some data visualization tools, such as frequency table, bar chart, pie chart, and Pareto diagram. We also talk about frequency distribution and histogram to illustrate the distribution information. Contingency table and scatter plot are helpful in summarizing relationship of categorical data and quantitative data, respectively. And thanks for your effort in mastering these skills in this video. Thank you.